Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into Brian Tracy's Get Smart.
Oh, yeah, this will be fun.
It's packed with strategies for unlocking your brain power and achieving greater success.
Definitely. And right off the bat, Tracy hits you with this powerful analogy.
Oh,
He compares it to having $1 million bank account,
wow.
but you can only access $20,000 of it.
That's frustrating.
It is. And he says that's basically how much of our brain power most people use,
Only 2%.
according to Tracy. Yeah. Just imagine what we could do if we tapped into more of that potential.
That's incredible. He also mentions that Buddhist story about the blind man and the elephant early on, right?
Yeah, he does. Each man touches a different part of the elephant, and they all come up with completely different descriptions.
Right. Thinking the part is the whole.
Exactly. And Tracy's point is that we often do that in life, too.
We make judgments based on limited information or a narrow perspective.
Yeah, and that can lead to missed opportunities or bad decisions.
So how do we shift our perspective to unlock more of that brain power? What does Tracy suggest?
Well, one key thing he emphasizes is moving from a short-term to a long-term perspective.
Long-term thinking. Got it.
He actually cites this really interesting study
Oh.
by a Harvard professor, Edward Banfield, back in 1970.
Okay.
Banfield found that people who earned more weren't necessarily smarter.
Really?
Yeah, they just tended to be long-term thinkers.
They planned years or even decades ahead. It makes you think maybe we're just too focused on instant gratification these days.
Tracy would definitely agree with that. He even points out that a whopping 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Wow, that many.
Yeah, it's a lot. And they often neglect long-term financial planning, things like retirement savings.
They prioritize immediate pleasure over future security.
Sadly, yes.
That's a little scary to think about, to be honest.
It is. It's a wake-up call for sure.
So what are some practical steps we can take to start thinking more long-term, especially when it comes to finances?
Well, Tracy has a really simple but effective recommendation.
I'm listening.
Set up a savings account right away and commit to putting away 10 to 15% of your income each month.
That's a good goal.
It is. He calls it harnessing the miracle of compound interest.
Where even small, consistent investments can grow significantly over time.
Right. It's not about getting rich quick, but about making those consistent choices that benefit our future selves.
I like that. It's about aligning our actions with our long-term goals.
Exactly. And speaking of aligning actions, Tracy also talks about the importance of slowing down our thinking.
That's an interesting concept. How do we even find the time to think clearly these days?
Right. We're bombarded with information and distractions constantly.
It feels impossible to unplug sometimes.
It really does. Tracy compares our thoughts to champagne bubbles.
Champagne bubbles.
Yeah, fleeting and lacking substance.
I can see that.
We often just react impulsively based on emotions instead of logic.
We don't really think things through.
Not always. He draws on research from a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, Daniel Kahneman.
Oh, wow.
Kahneman talks about two systems of thinking, a fast system and a slow system.
Interesting.
The fast one's intuitive and reactive, and the slow one's more deliberate and rational.
So for big decisions, we need to engage that slower, more rational system.
Yes. But how do we do that when everything's moving so fast?
Exactly. It's hard to slow down.
Well, Tracy offers some helpful tips.
I'm all ears.
One is the 72-hour rule.
What's that?
It means waiting at least 72 hours, so 3 full days, before making any big decision.
To let things settle.
Right. It gives your emotions time to cool off, and you can think things through more objectively.
That makes sense.
He also emphasizes solitude.
Finding time to just be alone with your thoughts.
Yeah, like 30 to 60 minutes each day in a quiet place, no phones, no music, no distractions.
Just peace and quiet.
Exactly. Allows your mind to wander, and that's when those deeper, more creative ideas often come up.
That's when you get those aha moments.
Exactly. And this ties in nicely with his GOSPA model for strategic thinking.
Juice Papa. Tell me more about that.
Sure. GOSPA stands for goals, objectives, strategies, priorities, and actions.
It's a whole framework.
It is. It helps you break down your goals into a concrete plan.
So instead of just having these vague ideas, we can actually create a roadmap.
Yeah, you start with your big picture goals, then you define the smaller objectives that will lead you there.
Step by step.
Then you figure out the strategies to achieve those objectives, prioritize your actions, and then, most importantly, you take action.
You put the plan into motion.
Exactly. It can be applied to any area of life, really.
From starting a business to improving your relationships.
Anything. And speaking of starting a business,
Yeah.
Tracy brings up this pretty shocking statistic.
What's that?
He says that 80% of new products fail.
80%. That's a lot.
It is. He thinks this is mostly because people don't really understand customer demand.
They don't do their research.
Right. They build something without making sure there's actually a market for it.
So we need to make sure people actually want what we're creating.
Absolutely. And that's where research comes in. Tracy encourages learning from experts, people who've already done what you're trying to do.
So reach out to the pioneers in your field.
Exactly. He even suggests using Google.
That seems obvious now,
But this book was published in 2016 when using search engines for market research was still a relatively new idea.
makes sense.
He also warns against something called confirmation bias.
Look that.
It's when you only look for information that confirms what you already believe.
Oh, I see. You ignore anything that challenges your assumptions.
Exactly. That can be really dangerous, especially when you're developing a new product or idea.
So how do you overcome confirmation bias? How do you make sure you're not just living in an echo chamber?
Tracy recommends taking a more scientific approach.
Okay.
First, state a clear hypothesis about what your product or idea offers.
Like, what problem does it solve?
Right. Then, actively try to disprove it by seeking out criticism from potential customers.
So get feedback from people who might actually use your product.
Exactly. Ask them what they think, what they like, what they don't like.
Be open to hearing the negative stuff, too.
Absolutely. It's about having the courage to test your assumptions, even if it's uncomfortable.
If your idea can't withstand scrutiny, it probably needs some work.
Right. And this all ties in with his emphasis on written goals, which is something I find really fascinating.
Me too. I'm curious about that. Why are written goals so important? Why not just keep them in your head?
Well, Tracy argues that writing them down forces you to be more specific, more concrete.
It makes them real.
It does. He also points out that in today's world, everything's changing so fast.
Overwhelming.
It can be. He says having clear written goals helps you filter information and adapt to change more effectively.
Makes sense.
And you know, it's crazy. Very few people actually have written goals.
Really? How few are we talking?
He says only 3% of people.
3%. That's it.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. But it shows how powerful this simple act of writing things down can be.
So how do you write effective goals? Does Tracy give any guidance on that?
He does. He actually has a whole process for it.
Okay, lay it on me.
First, brainstorm 10 goals you want to achieve in the next year.
So just get all those ideas out on paper.
Right. Don't overthink it, just write them all down.
All right, 10 goals. Then what?
He says to write each goal in a specific way.
How so?
Use the present tense, make it personal, and phrase it positively.
So instead of saying, I want to lose weight, I would say,
I am fit and healthy, like you're already living the goal in your mind.
I like that. It's a shift in mindset.
Then, out of those 10 goals, Tracy says to choose one that stands out as your major definite purpose for the year.
The one you're going to really focus on.
Right. And to make it even more actionable, create a list of at least 20 actions you can take to achieve that goal.
Break it down into smaller steps.
Exactly. And then, the key is consistency. Commit to tackling at least one task from that list every single day.
Small, consistent action.
That's the secret sauce. So we've got our long-term vision, our written goals, but then we have to face that daily grind, right?
And stay focused and get things done amidst all the distractions.
Yeah. So Tracy dives into that too. He actually starts with this really provocative idea. He says school might be teaching us some bad habits when it comes to work.
Oh, interesting. In what way? I always thought school was supposed to prepare you for the real world.
Well, he argues that the emphasis on play when we're young can set us up for distractions later on.
So we carry that recess mentality into adulthood.
Kind of, yeah. And it can really impact our ability to get things done.
Our productivity.
Exactly. He calls it our earning ability, our ability to work effectively and efficiently.
So how do we break free from that recess mentality and maximize our earning ability? What's Tracy's advice?
He introduces this concept called the Law of Three.
Okay, what's that?
It states that only 3 tasks really account for 90% of our results.
So the key is to identify those 3 crucial tasks and focus our energy on them.
You got it. It's about being ruthlessly selective with your time and energy.
But how do we figure out which tasks are those magic 3?
Well, Tracy has a process for that too.
Of course he does. He seems to have a system for everything.
He does. It's actually really simple. First, you write down every single task you're responsible for. Don't leave anything out.
Got it. Step 1, brain dump.
Then you ask yourself these 3 key questions.
Okay, hit me with them.
If you could only do one thing today, which would have the biggest impact? If you could do 2 things, which would be the second most important? And if you could do three things, which would be the third most crucial.
So you're ranking your tasks in order of importance.
Exactly. You're identifying those high-impact activities that really move the needle.
Makes sense. And once you've got your crucial three, you just focus on those and ignore everything else.
Ideally, yes. The goal is to minimize distractions and dedicate as much time as possible to those high-impact tasks.
Okay, I can see how that would boost productivity.
But of course, things don't always go according to plan, right?
Priorities shift, new challenges pop up.
Exactly. So that's where another key concept comes in, flexible thinking.
Being able to adapt to change.
Exactly. Tracy uses the example of Borders bookstore,
It went bankrupt, right.
Yeah, because they didn't adapt to the digital world.
Missed out on e-readers, online book selling,
Big time.
and it cost them.
Big time.
So Tracy's arguing that in today's world, we need to be able to adapt quickly to big changes.
Exactly. He calls it flexible thinking. It's essential these days.
He also talks about something called zero-based thinking.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That sounds intense, though.
It is. It's about constantly questioning everything you do.
Really? Like everything?
Basically, you ask yourself, if I could start over, knowing what I know now, would I still be doing this?
Wow, that's a tough question.
It is, but it can be really valuable.
To reevaluate your priorities.
Exactly. It helps you make sure you're on the right track.
But could it also lead to too much second guessing?
That's a good point. You don't want to get stuck in analysis paralysis.
Right. You still have to take action.
So it's about finding that balance. Using zero-based thinking strategically, not letting it hold you back.
Makes sense. It's like a tool for reflection and course correction.
Exactly. Not for constant self-doubt.
It seems like challenging your assumptions is a big theme for Tracy.
It definitely is. And it ties into another key distinction he makes.
Oh.
The difference between mechanical thinking and creative thinking.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
He uses this analogy of learning to cook.
Cooking. Okay, I'm following.
The first time you try a new recipe, it might not be perfect.
It takes practice.
Exactly. A good cook learns from their mistakes, tries different techniques, and eventually masters the dish.
They don't give up after one try.
Right? And that's how creative thinking works, too.
You have to embrace the process of trial and error.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn and grow.
So creative thinkers are all about finding solutions and constantly improving.
Yes. While mechanical thinkers get stuck in their ways.
They resist new ideas.
And that can really hold them back in the long run.
It's like that saying, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten.
Exactly. If you want different results, you have to try different things.
You have to be willing to step outside your comfort zone.
Absolutely. So how do we become more creative thinkers? Does Tracy have any advice on that?
I hope so. I could use some help in that department.
Well, he has a whole framework for creative problem solving.
Okay, I'm listening. What's the first step?
First, clearly identify the problem you're trying to solve.
And break it down into smaller pieces.
Exactly. Get specific. So instead of saying, I'm unhappy with my career,
You might dig deeper and say, I'm feeling unchallenged.
or I don't see any opportunities for growth. It's about getting to the root of the issue.
Okay, so define the problem clearly. Then what?
Brainstorm as many solutions as you can.
Don't settle for the first one that comes to mind.
Right. Quantity over quality at this stage.
Just let the ideas flow.
Exactly. Then, once you've got a bunch of options, you can evaluate them and choose the best one.
But even the best solution might not work out perfectly, right?
That's true. Things change. Unexpected challenges pop up.
So you need a plan B.
At least. Tracy talks about setting KPIs, key performance indicators.
To measure how effective your solution is.
Right. You also need to assign responsibility and set clear deadlines.
To keep things moving forward.
Exactly. And don't forget about backup plans.
Always good to have a plan B or even a plan C.
You got it. Be prepared to adapt as needed.
This is all about being proactive and strategic.
It is. And all of this ultimately connects to the final key concept in the book.
The big finale.
Developing a wealthy mindset.
Now we're talking. What's the secret to wealth, according to Brian Tracy?
He says it's not really a secret, but a way of thinking.
A mindset.
Exactly. He talks about the law of correspondence.
What's that?
It means your internal outlook is reflected in your external results.
So if you believe you can achieve wealth, you're more likely to.
Exactly. He uses his own story as an example. He was struggling financially, and he saw someone driving a Mercedes.
A fancy car.
Yeah, and he thought, I want that. But instead of just wishing for it, he started thinking like a wealthy person.
It changed his mindset.
He studied the habits of successful people, upgraded his skills, worked harder, and eventually he got that Mercedes.
He manifested it.
In a way, yeah, it's a powerful example of how our beliefs can shape our reality.
If you want different results, you have to start by thinking differently.
100%. And Tracy really emphasizes the importance of studying the habits of wealthy people.
Because habits drive our actions.
Exactly. He says habits account for 95% of what we do.
So if we can learn those good habits, we're more likely to achieve similar levels of success.
That's the idea. But even once you've got those good habits in place, it's important to keep learning and growing.
Never stop improving.
Exactly. Cultivate that growth mindset and strive to become the best version of yourself.
Always be learning, always be growing.
That's the key.
I love it. It all goes back to that $1 million bank account analogy.
Full circle.
We have so much potential just waiting to be unlocked.
It's all about tapping into that power.
And Tracy's book gives us the tools to do it.
It's really inspiring, actually.
It is. It makes you realize that anything is possible if you set your mind to it.
And if you're willing to put in the work.
Exactly. It's not a magic formula.
No, it's about taking action and developing those winning habits.
And it all starts with a shift in perspective.
That's the foundation.
Yeah. It really is amazing how just changing your perspective can open up so many possibilities.
It's true. Your potential isn't limited by your circumstances. It's limited by your own thinking.
And we often underestimate what we're capable of, I think.
We do, definitely.
But Brian Tracy gives us those practical tools and strategies.
He does, yeah.
To unlock that potential, to become more strategic, more focused, more successful.
It's all in there. Long-term thinking, creative problem solving, everything.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling super motivated after this deep dive.
Me too. Like, I've got a whole notebook full of ideas.
Same here.
But it's not enough to just understand it all, right?
Right. We have to actually apply it.
That's where the real magic happens.
So to our listener, take these insights from Get Smart and use them.
Yeah. Whether you're trying to advance your career, improve your relationships, or just live a more fulfilling life.
Brian Tracy's work can really help you achieve your goals.
It's all about remembering that you have the power.
To become the best version of yourself.
And it starts with that shift in perspective.
Being willing to learn and grow.
And taking action.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
We're excited to see what you accomplish.
Remember, you've got the power to get smart.